I'm Carol Prusa. I grew up in Chicago and lived there most of my growing up years. Went to the University of Illinois to study chemistry, and in chemistry I was very interested in the unknowns. Met people in art, decided they were also interested in unknowns, so I switched over to majoring in art. Major influence in my life really was my upbringing. I was raised in a really conservative and rigorous Calvinistic tradition, and certainly defines my outstanding work ethic. And then when I went to graduate school, it was really my professor, Cornelis Rutenberg, who had a profound influence on me. And in large part because she really believed that art was meaningful and profound, and that the art she was interested in was beautiful. Early on artistic influences really were Agnes Martin, who I believe also was a Calvinist and certainly very rigorous, but beautiful. And her writings are tremendous. So reading what she's written about art has been really grounding for me. And Anne Hamilton. So when I got out of graduate school, I actually did installation work, and I worked with hair and performance and video and other things. And so Anne Hamilton had a big influence. You know, from early on, I had a desire to make something that was outside of my daily existence. It's like maybe a form of survival. Growing up in my father was head elder. It was pretty intense. So what I could control was my dresser top. So I would arrange the things on my dresser top to make these beautiful little worlds that were very calming and satisfying, and seemed to offer something outside of like a daily existence. I happened to teach in Italy for a summer and for FAU, and there I taught silver point. So then I remember I could use silver point, and I could run paint over it and wouldn't lift. It would stay put and wouldn't smear. So that seemed important. And then I had worked with a Russian iconographer at Naropa Institute, which is a Buddhist university in Boulder, Colorado, and we talked about denial of ego there. And so in 15th century Byzantine icon painting method, I learned to deny ego, you let the pigments float. So then I was grinding graphite and putting them in fluids to allow the graphite, the different grades of graphite, and different ways I would grind it to do different things. So that would be, I would do the underdrawing, which would be very ego-driven in the silver point. I put the graphite wash over it, which would be then a denial of ego, allowing other possibilities to come forward. And then I would heighten with white, which would be allowing to see new possibilities out of what unfolded from that. The reason I started working on spheres and domes really was influenced, again, by teaching in Italy and seeing the domes in the cathedrals. And then I was thinking about the highest thing one could aspire to. I really thought nobody could be an artist in Florence because you couldn't beat what was there. It would be so debilitating. So I thought, okay, I can go home to Florida and maybe make some domes. Not that they could compete with Florence, but, so the idea that the dome became this place that everything you knew would reside in, the highest thing you could contemplate or consider, and that the dome was then a metaphor for one's cranium, or a petri dish, or a bowl, and it would contain all that you knew at that moment, knowing that the next moment you would know something different. And so then I was interested in divine geometries, sacred geometries, reading about that, researching that. My work has always been informed by symbol systems and historic materials, methods, and symbols. I've never really considered the word visionary, so it's striking to think about whether my work is or not. In some ways, I don't think about what my work is. I'm so involved in making what I need to see. and I certainly know in the process of making it, that it has to go beyond what I already know how to make. And not just it has to surprise me, but it has to resonate with me in a way that is deeper than how I knew myself before, or I'm receiving something. So I guess I'm assuming that distilled in these things are a sense of something greater than myself, because that's what I experience. But I haven't thought about them as being visionary. And I think my work is about being alive, and like life in an interconnected way, that that it's all one thing, and that there's a beauty to how that unfolds or works. That's why I use mathematics and geometries, because there's beauty in that. There's no doubt that it's connected there, but I haven't really worked on the vocabulary for that. I think I've worked more on the vocabulary for how it connects to science, and maybe that is a pragmatic thing to have done, just because it makes a bridge to other people who are maybe wary of anything that speaks to anything spiritual. Or I sense in the art world anyways, when you read art reviews, that there's this desire to know what something means, and that somehow whatever it means is going to do some sort of good. It's addressing world hunger, or it's addressing shortage of water, or there's some really kind of tangible, coherent meaning behind the work. But work that is beautiful or mysterious, or doesn't tell you what it's about in kind of social worker terms, then I think people are at a loss of what to say about it, because they're uncomfortable to say something's beautiful. I think they're uncomfortable to commit to how they sense something with their gut. Most reviewers kind of fall back into, well, what does it mean? And that meaning seems to come from outside of the object and gets kind of laid on the object. Whereas I say the object is embodied with its own sensibility, becomes its own world. And when you come in contact with it, one hopes for some sort of transference. I'm really interested in questions, and I've always been skeptical of answers. So my interest in mathematics maybe is a bit strange, because I think mathematicians are trying to follow a certain system and logic set of rules to model the world, really. Though, they do it really elegantly, and I think there's a real beauty to the equations, and there's a real rigor to their thinking. But there's also creativity in what they do. And, this desire to come up with an elegant system for describing who we are, shared by artists. So I like mathematicians, and I like how they think. As an artist, I'm not a mathematician, but I like geometry, because it's a way of having complexity and yet having simplicity. It's like folding. You have a few simple rules, and then something pretty complicated can come out of it. You do it because you have to do it. You don't do it because you want to do it, or you think you're going to be successful, or because somehow there's a market for it. If you could walk away from art, you should walk away from art. If you can't walk away from art, then you face it and you give it everything you have. It turns you inside out. But and part of that is failure. You have to be open, not just open to failure. You have to court failure. You have to court disaster. You have to make things that you don't know how to make, you have to think things that you've never thought before, and you have to recognize something that's outside of yourself when you've made it, and have a sense that somehow connects with you, and you have to cull through all of that, and it's just a lifetime process. I mean, I decided to go and become an artist. I mean, I was going to be I thought I was going to be a doctor. I was a chemistry major, but I mean, I thought I will never figure out art, and that would mean that every day I'd have to get up in the morning and learn something new, and then I would never have an answer. And I thought, what a great way to go through life.